Recording in progress.
I'd like to invite Natasha at this time for our Dharma talk. Zach bowing out.
It is August 3rd, 2024, and we're here for a day of mindfulness with Joyful Mountain Sangha. My name is Natasha Bruckner, and I'm here with three Sangha friends from Boundless Freedom Project, Lily, Kamal, and Oscar. And all four of us will be sharing today about our theme, which is the journey of freedom. Also, Lily is our timekeeper, just so you know. Lily will help us make sure we're on track so that all four of us will have time to share. So I'd like to start by sharing a little bit about the practice of freedom based on my experiences as a volunteer in a Buddhist meditation program in a men's prison here in California, where I've been volunteering since 2009. I recently heard a man in prison talk about how hard he's been working for many, many years to change his behavior, to improve his habits, to live a more wholesome life, because he so badly wants to get out of prison and just go home to his family. And the parole board will only find him suitable for release from prison if he can demonstrate that he is genuinely deeply changed and that he's safe to go into society again and won't commit any crimes. And I've noticed in my volunteering in prison that that's what most incarcerated people want more than anything. They want to get out of prison, go home to their families, and just have the freedoms and privileges that all of us here on this call have every day. And so, of course, hearing him talk made me so keenly aware and grateful for the privileges that I have in my life, the material freedoms that I have. But at the same time, as I thought about people in prison and how highly motivated they are to do whatever it takes to be free, I thought about the Buddhist teaching that encourages us, if we want to be truly liberated and awakened, to practice as if our hair is on fire. And of course, that's a teaching about prioritizing what's most important in our life, the true liberation. It's really hard for some of us to imagine our hair being on fire and literally what that would feel like. But I know that all of us at the same time have had such hard experiences in our lives that we were motivated to practice deeply because that's when we needed the practice the most. And that those times have given rise to some of our most powerful mindfulness practice. So we've really felt that, we know the truth that life is suffering that the Buddha taught, and that we often feel like we're in a prison in our minds, or that our emotions are a form of prison. But at the same time, it's that very suffering that motivates us to practice. And it reminds me of a kind of pine cone that I've heard about that only opens its seeds when it's been burned in a fire. And it's the same idea of a lotus that can only grow when it has that mud and muck to nourish it. And the Buddha taught us that fire, that mud, that suffering that's so painful is actually a catalyst for our freedom. And it's a way to bring us back to home, to our island of mindfulness in us, and to that really beautiful, fresh, healing place that is our refuge. And that's always there for us and can't be taken away from us. Ty, our teacher, wrote this book here called Be Free Where You Are. Actually, this is a transcript of a talk that he gave in a prison. And so in the book, he defines freedom as freedom from afflictions, from anger, and from despair. And he says, and this is a quote, "You can practice freedom every moment of your daily life. Every step you take can help you reclaim your freedom." And it also reminds me of another quote by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and a psychologist and neurologist. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning that I'm sure a lot of you have read. But the quote is, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So that idea that everything, we can lose everything, but the freedom to choose how we respond, how we, what our attitude is. And so I'm learning to recognize that in my practice, that I have a choice about how I respond to challenges in my life, both in my mind and heart, and then externally around me, any chaos that's happening, I have a choice to generate mindfulness in response to that. I can choose to send loving kindness out. I can choose to activate my imagination and in my mind create other conditions that are healing, that are loving, that are compassionate. And one example for me of that is when I go into the prison, when I volunteer. I go in once a month and always with another volunteer, so the two of us always going in together. And we go through several security checkpoints, and then we get to step into the prison, and we step into a long hallway that's like an enclosed, in a concrete building, a hallway with cells and rooms on either side. And we walk down to the prison chapel. And at that time, we arrive at dinner time. So a lot of times when we go in, we're walking down the hallway one way, and coming toward us, on right next to us on the other side, is a stream of men, incarcerated men, who are going to the chow hall for dinner. And literally hundreds of men are coming. As the two of us are walking this way, all these men are coming the other way. And over the years, as I've done that walk, I've found that a lot of strong emotions come up for me as I'm walking to the chapel. Fear for my safety comes up. Anger about the prison system, despair about this, this violent system that I've chosen to volunteer in, the racism, the injustice that I perceive to happen there. And so with those strong emotions coming up, I've made it my practice to make that a mindful walk and to really consciously, strongly focus on each step as I'm walking that hallway. And it's a beautiful practice that's allowed me to deepen that gift that Tai gave us of mindful walking. And I'm able to access a real quietness, a real stillness in myself, and a deeper awareness of the emotions and the reality. I'm able to meet the eyes of people I'm passing and smile and connect. And so I'm able to feel that real freedom. And then we arrive in the chapel and we meet our Sangha. And right now our Sangha is about 5 to 10 men usually who show up. It used to be more before the pandemic. Right now it's pretty small and cozy. And it's a beautiful Sangha because the men in there are all deep practitioners, and they've been practicing for many, many years. Their wisdom, their insight, their solidity is just phenomenal. And whenever they speak, I feel like I'm hearing a Dharma talk. Even though they still want to leave prison and be with their families, that's still a strong aspiration for them. They also have a sense, my sense of them is that they are free from mental imprisonment because of their practice. Their minds are no longer in prison. And that's how I feel around them. They have a sense of their true home being in the here and now because of their practice. So I'm aware of our Sangha there as a place of freedom, because we're all choosing to generate mindfulness together and to be in a place of collective presence, kindness, caring, compassion, and real interbeing. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm going to pass it over now to the next speaker, bowing out, and whichever of my 3 friends would like to go next, please bow in and share with us. Thank you. Natasha bowing out.
I'll go ahead and jump in. Lily bowing in. Thank you, Natasha, for starting us off. I really appreciate you and love you. I think you know that. In looking at the topic for today, this path of freedom, and thinking about my own experience in the work that I'm doing for Boundless Freedom, I think about the title of our organization, Boundless Freedom, this concept that freedom can be boundless. When I was incarcerated, it was very clear to me how not free I was from my, from my perception. What society was telling me, what my environment was telling me was that my body was not my own, that I was not allowed to make my own decisions. I was not free to do with myself as I pleased. And that affected my mind very deeply because it was constantly reinforced that I was not free. And so what arose in me was this agitation, this deep, deep annoyance, frustration, and agitation that I want to be free at any cost. I will do whatever it takes to be free. And so I oriented to freedom in that I would behave the right ways, I would say the right things, do whatever they asked of me, and orient toward my freedom as my physical freedom, and orienting toward the privileges and leisures that I did not have in respect as my peers outside of prison did. And so this pressure from the outside, this constant pressure pushing on me, telling me I'm not free, I leaned into it. I believed it. It became part of who I was. And I think the system was operating as designed, pressing me into a very, very narrow way of behaving and thinking in order to comply with what the system's ideals were around my freedom and whether or not I'm allowed to be free. But then someone arrived in my life when I got transferred into the federal system from the military system. Someone arrived in my life who, from the very beginning, embodied a sense of freedom, the reality of freedom, beyond concept. This boundless sense of joy, this boundless sense of happiness, this regal demeanor, upright, bright, conscious, present. And I was blown away that this could be a possibility for somebody who was also incarcerated. And I remember the first time I saw Sangha, who was my teacher in prison, I just thought, whatever this person has, whatever they've got going on, whatever they're taking, whatever they're buying, I want in. I want into this. How is this possible? And what it did was her visage, her presence touched into a deep place of woundedness in me. That touched into this place over the span of my life that I had been compressed by shame, indecision, a longing for belonging, a longing to be real in myself. And so in hearing her words, in listening to her speak, in listening to her Dharma talks, in sitting at her feet and learning from her, what I came to realize was that my freedom was mine to decide. That yes, I was encapsulated in this very tight environment, and there were very specific ways in which I was allowed to physically be. But boundless freedom was possible. That yes, I had to walk to certain places, but in every step I was free. I could be free, as Ty says. I could be a free being, not just in spite of my environment, but as a condition of my reality. And this was so powerful. It changed me in the most fundamental of ways. Suddenly, I was less angry. I was less shameful. I was able to start unpacking this woundedness, unpacking the shame around my actions that harmed my community. And in being able to do that, having the container of the practice in which to dance with all of that, to unpack it, gave me the opportunity to overcome my shame, to orient to those things with love and compassion, with gentleness. And in doing so, I was able to then change how I acted in my present world. I wasn't beholden to the past anymore. I wasn't bounded in by these things. I was suddenly present. There was no future I needed to be worried about, though, of course, I wanted to be free of the prison. But I could be present. I could be free right now. I could smile in the face of anger. I could trust that I was a good and whole person. I could love the people around me, even when they didn't love me, which was a mind-blowing concept to me. And also, I could, just by being myself and being in my practice, I could also provide for the people around me the opportunity to also be free. And that is a gift of immeasurable wealth. To have had that poured into me and to be able, simply by being in my practice and being present, giving that back. It's so powerful. It's immeasurably powerful for someone who is incarcerated. And so now, being a part of Boundless Freedom and being free, quote unquote, of that prison, it's such a gift to be able to give back in this way with Boundless Freedom, to be able to support our volunteers and our staff, to be able to support our currently incarcerated and formerly incarcerated community and family in giving them what they need to promote these practices, to be present inside and out with people who have, just as all of us have experienced deep suffering. We can provide them with a guidance around navigating these things in a way that helps them to be boundlessly free. It is so beautiful. It is revolutionary. And that's really, I think, the point, is the Buddha was a revolutionary. He went against the stream. He did not care for status. His only thought was in freedom from suffering. That very basic truth, that question he started everything with. And so now, coming with that question into the world of how do we be free, and coming from the perspective that it should be boundless because the Buddha showed us it could. It has been my joy to be a part of this organization, to be continuing with them, to be a part of this moment with all of you. Yeah, and I'm just so thankful and a little overwhelmed in this moment, but feeling so much deep joy in having this opportunity. And I hope going forward that all of you will please reach out to us. We would love to connect with you and to bring you in and talk about your own work, learn more about you, show you more about Boundless Freedom, and just build on this wonderful community. So thank you. Lily, bowing out.
Come on, bowing in. Freedom. So, what it means to me, definitely my first thoughts were the moment that the cuffs go on my wrist, mm, it just became about getting them off and leaving those facilities behind and walking back out into the world and family, making my own choices, doing whatever I wanted, going wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Um, at least these are the things that I was telling myself. Um, and I remember while I was inside, my mom would remind me that it was freedom wasn't necessarily about a place, but a state of being and a state of mind, and that I could be free while still within the facilities. And we would have various discussions on that, and reference family members and even our own lives. And as I journeyed through the system and came more in touch with myself, and reconnecting with the various emotions, traumas, um, it started to kind of link in and process more that prior to going into prison, I was held captive within myself. I mm, was and still am a person who struggles with depression and anxiety. And oftentimes, especially when I was a lot younger, I would let those things overcome me and just trap me in a state of mind and a state of being where I lose touch with reality and I focus only on the negative and the past, and I can't move forward or even be present in what's happening in the current moment and what's happening around me. Freedom is not being trapped in those moments. Freedom is being able to be where you are when you're there. The past has already happened and can't change it. Can learn from it, can grow, but can't change it. The future has yet to come. All the worries or the hopes, they haven't occurred yet, may never occur. Of being stuck and focused on a future that has yet to come, lose sight and lose track of what the present is right now. And for me, that wasn't freedom. I remember my friends and family would say how the world's become very much absorbed with technology and their phones. And I'll see it everywhere. People aren't even looking where they're going, they're just walking, staring down. And when I came out and saw just that even within my own family, where we were walking in a mall area and my mom was stuck looking at her phone, didn't realize uh, what was around her, the people and everything. And I had to lean over, grab her before she bumped into someone else. And that distraction from being in reality and being present, I start feeling that these days when I catch myself and I'm just staring down at my screen and constantly trying to find stuff, trying to figure stuff out, but I'm not even existing in the moment and taking time to really appreciate and feel the value of what life brings and what is right in front of me. So while I was inside, my mom said, you can find freedom before you get out. It's about a state of mind. And I worked and still work on my emotional state, my staying present, staying focused. And oftentimes I find that there's moments when I look back and feel that I had the most peace while I was inside of a cell. And it's because it gave me an opportunity to really sit with myself and be present and not have all the distractions of the world around me, but to just release it all and be appreciative of what I do have, bonds with other people, food, water, shelter. I could focus on all the negatives that were happening around me and everything that was going on at the time, but it wouldn't have benefited me or anyone else. But what I could do was wake up each morning, smile, say hi to each person that I pass by, and pass on a little bit of that peace and joy that I started developing, and that thankfulness each morning of just, it's another morning. I'm up, I'm awake, I'm alive. That first breath when you wake up, and that last breath before you go to sleep because you can't remember the rest of the breaths while you sleep. That to me is freedom. Come all bowing out.
Oscar bowing in. Well, I was um I was born in Los Angeles. Culturally, I was born into a Mexican American system of growing up, and in which there was domestic violence. In the particular experience that I had, there was alcoholism. In some other communities, seemed to reflect some of those things right back to me. And I remember early on, I thought to myself, wanting freedom, um, sticking to the theme of journey of freedom. I remember back then wanting freedom, but I would wonder if that was it just felt like it was a concept that was really far from me. Didn't understand how to get there. And I remember experiencing wanting to escape the chaos whenever there was domestic violence, whenever there was people participating in their alcoholism. Um, when there, I remember feeling a lot of stress around me in the people around me, and in with all that stress, sometimes there was moments where people could be compassionate and kind, but there was also moments where, as people, that wasn't being expressed, and it just, again, it would trigger me to want to run towards this idea of freedom, but I didn't know how to get there. And as a young teenager, well, before I go on, I remember years later, I heard Oprah Winfrey say that she would ask herself as a younger person, what's wrong with this person? But with time and study and contemplation, she came to think, what happened to this person? Later in life, I thought to myself, I started using uh, that idea or that premise when thinking of my childhood growing up, when thinking of my neighbors, when thinking of the community I grew up in Los Angeles and South Central Los Angeles. And I remember leaving my home um, at 11, 12 years old, fleeing, internally feeling like I was fleeing. But where I fled to was what I thought was freedom or would give me protection or safety. Um, Actually was the opposite. I started to hang around with gang members, a local gang, a local Mexican American gang in the city of South Los Angeles. And no sooner did I become part of that gang at 12, 13 years old, that I started experiencing the death of friends, one or two or three dying a year. And very quickly, as when I was still living at home with my parents, I started not only experiencing the feeling of wanting to be free, but not knowing how to get there, but simultaneously experiencing the sensation that life uh, is fleeing, and that at any time I can lose my life. And this started to happen very early on in my life. That I started thinking, will I be here today? Will I be here tonight? Will I be here tomorrow? Seeing now my first with the violence at home, now with the violence in the street. Um, so not only was I thinking, will I be here tonight or tomorrow? Will my friends be here? I remember sitting, watching my friends and wondering if they would be here tomorrow. Um, so I was thinking that, but at the same time, I was thinking, where could I go to be free? Where could I go to be safe? Um, uh, I remember law enforcement um, seeing, based on my experience, uh, it seemed to me that we're trapped in the same system. I would get picked up. I would be told that I was a gang member if I had anything illegal. After not finding anything, I would then get dropped off in areas where it was believed that I would make it home, walking back home or to the area that I originally lived in. So this was very interesting to me. And I went to prison at 17 years old after committing a crime, for which I was tried as an adult and received a double life sentence plus 8 years. And again, I felt that I had ran for safety towards something that actually did the opposite. Not only did it make me feel more trapped, it brought the idea of death a lot closer to me. Not only in my thinking, but now I'm witnessing it. And this was very interesting because after 5, 6 years, 8 years of being incarcerated, of being a juvenile in an adult system, I found myself in maximum security prisons in California at 17 years old, 18 years old, 19 years old, and I'm telling myself, I'm thinking about how can I be free? And not until years later that I encountered the Dharma. I remember when I heard the ideas of freedom, I remember thinking that even if I don't ever get out of prison, if I could just experience internal freedom. And it was those practices introduced to those practices and eventually following a teacher that was coming to visit me. They gave me an internal experience of that, even while incarcerated. And today, as I participate with the Boundless Freedom Project, my goal is to share that not only with incarcerated folks, but also people that are not incarcerated, who find themselves experiencing an experience of incarceration inside their own selves. And because since I've been out 4.5 years now, I encounter a lot of folks, a lot of people who experience feeling incarcerated, feeling trapped, yet physically they've never been incarcerated. So today I joined ranks with the Boundless Freedom Project with that goal, in the journey of freedom that I got to experience with the life that I have lived, with the practice that I have practiced with Buddhism, allowing me to find a way out of what had been what I had been trapped in so long. But thank you for your time, and I really do appreciate every single one of you allowing me into this space and inviting me into this space. Thank you. Bye-bye.